Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our latest Railbookers webinar. It's fantastic to have so many of you joining me on this rather sunny Tuesday afternoon. At least it's sunny where I am. I hope it's sunny where you are too. As we've got people joining us all the time, what we'll do is we'll probably just pause for around about another minute, 30 seconds or so, just to allow those people who are just joining time to get settled in and comfortable. So if you were finishing off a cup of coffee or making yourself comfortable, whatever it might be, you've got time to do that. And we'll start in around about another minute's time. So once again, thank you for joining us. Welcome to those of you just tuning in. We'll start in around about 1 minute's time. Good afternoon once again, and welcome to those of you who have just tuned in. Welcome to our latest Railbookers webinar. It's great to have you with us this Tuesday afternoon. Today's webinar is entitled Island Holidays with Railbookers. So all of the holidays that we'll look at today will all have that theme in common. There'll be some island destinations involved, and fantastic destinations they are too. Just to let you know the format of the webinar today, how things will proceed. We'll start off with a very brief introduction, which is mainly for the benefit of those of you who have perhaps not travelled with us before, less familiar with who we are and what we do. Then we'll just take a very brief moment. We'll slip into a siding for want of a better description. Very briefly though, just to answer a question that keeps coming up all the time that we're being asked by many of you out there, which is what's happening in other European countries as far as making things safe traveling by train at the current time. So we'll just take a very brief detour to answer that. Then we'll start the main part of the webinar. Hopefully we'll have time for a question or two at the end as well. You should be able to submit any questions you like using the box on the screen during the course of the webinar, and hopefully I'll have time to answer one or two at the end. If I don't get round to yours though, don't despair. One of the team will reach out to you tomorrow and make sure we've answered that question. So it will get answered one way or the other. So we'll make sure we get absolutely everybody responded to, I promise. Right. Introduce myself as well. My name's Matt. My pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Off we go. So firstly, before we begin the introduction, I just need to make you aware that we do have a special limited time offer in place at the moment, which allows you to pick your perk and receive up to £500 per couple in free upgrades. So that would be £300 per couple or £150 per person towards perks of your choice if you're traveling for 3 to 6 nights, £400 per couple or £200 per person, 7 to 9 nights, and the £500 or £250 per person is for 10 nights or more. And on the screen you can see some of the different ideas that you might be able to use that for. You could use it to upgrade your accommodation on board the train, for example. Perhaps you'd like to upgrade your hotel room to a room with a view or a suite maybe, or you could add on additional activities or sightseeing tours. Equally, you might decide to upgrade the hotel full stop from a 4-star to a 5-star perhaps, or 3-star to a 4-star maybe. Or you could simply decide to add in additional nights to your holiday. Lots of different ways of doing it. As we look at the different holidays today, I'll give you just occasionally a couple of suggestions to show you some examples of how you could do that if you wanted to. But a reminder, it's a limited time special offer. You can find out more by heading to railbookers.co.uk. Or if you prefer, of course, you can give us a call on the number below too. So, brief introduction for anyone who's new to who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Firstly, just to take a moment and explain why travellers love Railbookers and travelling by train with us. And the answer to that is, well, we hope it's for a number of different reasons. Firstly, the rail expert knowledge. As we like to say, we speak rail. We know everything that goes into creating the perfect rail holiday, from knowing the best routes and combinations, the best train times and so on, to make sure it's the best holiday it can possibly be. And that holiday itself can be anyone from a wide selection, really. It could be anything from a luxury journey, could be a city break, could be a getaway to Scotland for a couple of days, could be a multi-country journey, could be an extension to a river cruise. Perhaps if you have a cruise book next year, it could be doing a little bit of travel before or after the cruise, or it could be creating a tailor-made itinerary. Whatever it might be, you can depart from today anytime up until 2023. So if it's, a special occasion that you're planning for, or you'll be traveling at a busy time next year, then it's never too early. In other words, any destination, any date for any length of time. If the train goes there, then so do we. Why book now? Well, we do have a maximum flexibility offer in place at the moment for anyone who books a new reservation up to and including the 30th of June this year. What that means is you have the freedom to change your date, the duration of your trip, or even the final destination if you need to, at any point up until 5 days prior to departure, without incurring any change or cancellation fees to do that. We do also have a number of digital brochures available from our website right now. There's a number of different ones, as you can see here, ranging from our main Railbookers brochure, which has a selection of our top-selling holidays by rail around the globe, to a little bit closer to home, UK and Ireland independent rail holidays, as you can see here. There's one with a focus on Scotland in particular as well. We've also got one on luxury rail holidays if you're looking for something really special, and lots of different offers as well. There's also one on ideas of how to bookend your river cruise as well, if you'd like to add on some travel before or after that. So quite a few different options. Again, you can find them all via the website railbookers.co.uk. And booking with us, you also benefit from 24-hour support from our global team, not just here in the UK, but also Sydney, Australia, Toronto, Canada, and also East and West Coast USA as well. One of the other benefits of booking with Railbookers is that we work directly with all of the main rail operators in Europe, North America, and beyond. For example, all the companies you can see here are not just our partners, but our friends too at Trenitalia over in Italy, SNCF, Deutsche Bahn, Eurostar, of course, for so many of our trips begin, Swiss Railways, Spanish Railways, across the pond with Via Rail in Canada, Amtrak, of course, and many more besides as well. And what that allows us to do is, firstly, it means we always have access to the best available fares and prices for you, because we work directly with each individual operator. But also it means that that's how we're able to offer all of these trips up to 2 years in advance. And crucially, if you are looking to secure that those dates for your special trip next year, for example, it means you always pay the current year's prices, so you miss out on any price increases that might happen over the next 12 to 18 months. Okay, introduction out of the way. As promised, we'll just take a very quick detour to answer this question, because it is one that we're hearing an awful lot of the time from many of you by phone, by email, on these webinars as well, which is why we've started featuring it on its own separate slide. And obviously, travel has resumed in the UK. We've got lots of people traveling to Scotland and other places right now. As far as Europe is concerned, not quite yet, but people are keen to know what's happening in all of the different countries. And to be honest, obviously it's slightly different in each country, but to summarize as broad as we can, it's pretty similar to what's happening in the UK. So there's a number of measures in place, for example, requiring facial coverings in stations and on trains for all passengers and staff, stopping the sale of food and drink on board trains in many cases. Now, where that does happen, it doesn't mean that you can't bring on a picnic or some packed lunch. Of course you can. It just means that you might not be able to purchase food and drink on board. The already existing seat configuration and seat allocations on board have been changed in many cases to allow for that all-important social distancing. And for the same reason, where it's possible to do so, ticket control is being carried out in a contactless manner through email and on apps as well. And of course, the already existing cleaning and sanitation measures have been increased at the current time too. So hopefully that gives you an idea for those of you who've been wondering as to what's happening over in mainland Europe. As I say, it's broadly similar to the situation here. Okay, so that's the introduction out of the way. Now it's time to start the main body of the webinar. So we'll look at a selection of fantastic holidays by train, all of which have one thing in common. Well, actually, they might have more than one thing in common, but let's see as we go. The main thing, the subject of today's webinar, is that there will be islands involved in every single one of the holidays we look at today. The first selection we'll look at are closer to home. So we'll have some great options for perhaps this summer or autumn maybe, if you're looking at getting away in this country, or indeed whenever you might be choosing to travel. And then we'll also look at a few options a little bit further afield too. So if you're looking for perhaps something later in the year, or next summer's holiday, something in the spring, whatever it might be, there'll be some great options there as well. So hopefully we've got a nice selection. Anyway, our first itinerary that we will look at is Edinburgh, the Isle of Skye, and the West Highland line. So some absolutely beautiful scenery on this particular holiday. Here we'll start with travel on the Caledonian sleeper from London up to Fort William in the Scottish Highlands. You'll begin with 2 nights in Fort William, and whilst you're in Fort William, we include a day trip on the West Highland line between Fort William and the small fishing village of Mallaig, and that's probably the most scenic rail line in the UK. After a 2-night stay in Fort William, you'll then transfer on to Portree on the Isle of Skye for a 3-night stay, including a guided full-day tour of the island. After leaving Skye, you'll head on to Inverness by private transfer for a 2-night stay, and then head down by train to the Scottish capital, and you'll spend 2 nights in Edinburgh before returning to your local train station, wherever that might be. And this is the train that will be waiting for you at London Euston Station to begin this particular journey. This is one of only 2 sleeper trains in the UK, the Caledonian Sleeper, which actually runs to a number of different destinations in Scotland. But I think the journey that's featured on this particular holiday going to Fort William is my favourite, and I'll explain why. The answer really is due to the scenery, which might sound a little bit strange when we're talking about an overnight journey, but I'll explain why that is. So after your overnight travel, you'll wake up in the middle of the Scottish countryside, Scottish Highlands, and the great thing about the journey to Fort William is the last part of the journey is actually the start of the West Highland line, and you actually pass through a national park, and most of the time, fingers crossed if you're lucky, you should be able to see deer running around in the surroundings alongside the train. Really nice welcome to Scotland. Wonderful countryside. I'd say most of the time you get to see some deer as well. So it's a really nice start to the trip, and just puts you in the right mood to be enjoying some of those wonderful wide open spaces and the countryside of the Scottish Highlands. So traveling in that direction, particularly say if you're traveling, summer, early autumn, when the nights are relatively short, then it really is a nice journey to do. So that's the journey. What's it like on board? Well, There's three different types of sleeping accommodation, so I'll just take a quick moment to explain what they are and what the differences are. This is the first of the three. This is the classic room. And it's basically, the reason it's called that is it's the classic configuration of an overnight sleeper train. So for any of you who've traveled overnight before, this is exactly what you would be expecting. You've got the one bed above the other. These cabins can accommodate either one person or two people. If you are traveling as part of a family, there are a limited number of family options available as well for, one or two adults with either one or two children. There's some options there too. The next cabin type above that is called the club room, and the main difference between the two is, well, it's twofold really. One is that the club rooms are all en suite. They all have a small walk-in bathroom included in the cabin. So you have your own shower, toilet and wash basin. As well as that, you also get your breakfast included in the cost of the ticket as well, which you can either enjoy in the privacy of your cabin, which is what's happening now, or once restrictions are lifted a little bit more, you'll be able to enjoy that in the club lounge on board the train, which is particularly nice for this journey because I mentioned the great scenery you pass through in the morning. It's really nice. I mean, you can enjoy that wherever you are, but in the club lounge, you just have that little bit extra space and large windows to really take it all in and relax while enjoying a nice cooked breakfast or smoked salmon or coffee or whatever it might be that will get you going in the morning. So well worth thinking about. Most of the time throughout the year, it's a relatively small increase as well to upgrade from the classic room to the club room. We're talking on average around about £20 or so per person to upgrade for that, and you get the ensuite facilities and the breakfast included if you go for that option. So it's well worth considering. There is also a third option, which is a little bit special. And if the name, the Caledonian Double, doesn't give it away, the image on the screen certainly will. The main difference here is you get the large double bed that you can see here. And for those of you, again, who've traveled by train overnight before, or have perhaps looked into doing so, you'll realize that this is pretty rare, especially on a non-luxury or private train. It's very rare to have the option to have a really comfortable double bed like this one. So it really does allow you to start the journey in style and maximum comfort if you would like to do so. If this does take your fancy, the main thing I need to impress upon you is that there are only 2 of these per train, so they will sell out quickly. Now, if you were thinking about heading to Scotland this summer, don't panic if you like the look of this. There are some of these cabins still available on certain departures, so it is still possible if you're looking for a summer holiday. But in general, the earlier you book, the more chance you have of getting them on the dates that you want, because there's only 2 of them on each departure, so they go quickly. As well as the double bed, you get the ensuite bathroom, of course, the breakfast, the same as you do in the club cabin, and you get a little bag of extra toiletries and goodies, as you can see here as well. So there's a couple of different options to head up to the Scottish Highlands. Just to show you one of the featured hotels that we include on this particular holiday, this is our featured property in Inverness, the Kingsmill Hotel. Very nice property indeed, has its own spa and is also set within 4 acres of beautifully manicured grounds, which you can see a little bit of through the window there. So very nice to have a stroll around in the evening and a very relaxing home away from home whilst in the Scottish Highlands. I mentioned the travel on the West Highland line as being one of the highlights of the trip, and this shows you why. I think this is the Jacobite steam train, and if you were traveling between April and October, then this is how you'd be experiencing this wonderful journey. It's probably the most scenic rail line in the UK, and as you can see here, plenty of green rolling Scottish countryside. You also have plenty of mountains, lakes and rivers that you pass by as well. You really do get the full spectrum of the Scottish Highland experience. This scene here is probably the most famous part of the whole route. This is the Glenfinnan Viaduct, which the train passes over on its way to Mallaig. And in fact, for any of you who perhaps have seen one of the Harry Potter films, or have family members who enjoy those or have watched them with you, then if you've seen the train passing over the viaduct, firstly, this is the viaduct that is featured in those films, and secondly, the exterior of the Jacobite train does model as the train in those films as well. So a little bit of cinema history there too. So spectacular journey, and then you spend an hour or so in the small fishing village of Mallaig. Quite picturesque, not a huge amount to do there, but very easy to grab some lunch or have a coffee. It's quite a nice pub there as well if you'd rather go there, or you can have a wander around the harbour area too, and then you'll head back on the train for that wonderful journey once again back to Fort William. And the West Highland line, really absolutely stunning scenery. We talk a lot, especially on this webinar, about some of the amazing train journeys you can do around the world in Switzerland, in Austria, and other places too. But this is a very, very nice scenic journey, and it's, if not quite on our own doorstep, well, it's certainly not too far away, and it's definitely one that we can experience this summer as well. And I mentioned that I would just drop in a few suggestions throughout the webinar of how you could use the Pick Your Perk credit that we have for upgrades and additional activities. That's running for a limited period of time, and here's one. You could upgrade to first class on any of your train journeys, but here's an idea of what it's like on board the Jacobite steam train. You can see really comfortable armchairs there, so lots of space, lots of comfort, perfect for enjoying that great Scottish Highland scenery from. And as we are talking broadly speaking about holidays that all have one thing in common, which is the islands that are featured on every single one, it would be remiss not to talk briefly about the island that's featured on this particular holiday. And this, of course, is the Isle of Skye. So on this holiday, you'd have 3 nights in the Isle of Skye. You'd actually stay in the town of Portree. And whilst you'd be on the island, you would have a full day's guided tour that will take you all around the island to lots of different parts, so you can see the varied landscapes and really everything that's involved in making it such a wonderful destination, because it is very varied, from the countryside that you can see here with those wide open spaces and fantastic fresh air, but also the rugged coastlines with hopefully some of the local flora and fauna, birds and beasties, which you'll be able to spot, hopefully all being well, but also some of the small towns with the painted doors, little fishing villages, and really just get a full flavour of the entire destination. And this is the hotel that you would be staying in. This is the SKEABOST Hotel on Skye. It's a former 19th century hunting lodge, which I think you get a little sense of, don't you, from the architecture and the decor here. And it's set in a really tranquil lochside setting. It even has its own golf course, which may be an incentive to stay there. It may not be. If it isn't, obviously it's not compulsory. So you can ignore the golf course and head out into Portree and the wider surroundings instead, if you prefer. But a really nice and comfortable and perfect base from which to explore the Isle of Skye. Next up, we're going to look slightly further afield and perhaps in a way a little bit off the beaten track, but we're still going to remain in the UK for now. And what's nice about the next 2 holidays, I think, is firstly, they have another theme that will kind of continue throughout the holidays we look at on this webinar, in that there's a really great historical aspect to all of them. Lots of great examples of history, in this case, the history of our own country, and some wonderful places to visit. And both of the next 2 are perhaps destinations that may not always be the first one that jumps to the front of your mind or trips off the tongue. I've got lots to recommend them, and are proving to be really popular actually for this summer, as a lot of people are looking for something closer to home but maybe a little bit different or a little bit more unusual. Anyway, This is our Scottish Highlands and the Orkneys itinerary. Starts off in a similar fashion to the last one, but this time the overnight travel from London on the Caledonian sleeper is up to Inverness. We start off with a one-night stay in Inverness, and we find time to include the day trip to the Isle of Skye. So this time it's just the one day, but you get the full guided tour once again, and then head back to Inverness for that overnight stay. And then the next day, you journey by transfer then by ferry from John O'Groats over to the Orkney Islands. You have a two-night stay there. It's fully guided throughout because it's quite difficult to be able to visit all of the main sites and places of interest you'd like to without being able to do that. So definitely recommended. And you'll visit lots of places of historical interest such as SKARA, BRAE, and many more besides, which we'll look at in a second. Then you'll retrace your steps, head back to Inverness for a further two-night stay, and then down to Edinburgh for 2 nights before heading back to either where you came from or wherever you'd like to end up, your local train station, wherever that might be. And another reminder of some of the beauty of the Isle of Skye. So this time you'll be visiting on a day trip. This is EILEAN DONAN Castle. And EILEAN DONAN is a really picturesque tidal island where 3 lochs converge, come together. And it's just a beautiful picturesque setting, as you can see here. Really, really, wide open spaces, bit of history there too, of course, and just fantastic natural beauty. So it's a great spot to visit, which is included on the full tour that you have traveling around the island, but really, really picturesque setting. Then after your first night in Inverness, what happens next is you travel north through the Black Isle, and as part of the journey, you'll actually travel past this amazing, imposing building, DUNROBIN Castle. After that, you'll carry on, you'll cross the Pentland Firth, and then you'll arrive in Kirkwall, which is the capital of the Orkneys. It's a 2-night stay that you have in the Orkneys, and as I say, it's fully guided throughout to take you to all of the main sites and places of interest. One of which you can see here. These are the standing stones of STENNESS, a Neolithic monument 5 miles northeast of Stromness. And they may be the oldest such site in the British Isles. So lots and lots of history here. Again, having the guide with you as well as taking you there also helps just to explain a little bit more of the gaps and fill in the history of this part of the world. And also, of course, we have SKARA BRAE, which you can see here. Again, stone-built Neolithic settlement, and incredibly, in some ways, older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. So, the Orkney Islands might not, as I was saying before, they might not be the first place that immediately comes to mind when you think of somewhere a bit different off the beaten track. But, you've got this real link to the past, lots of history, and also, what fantastic wide open spaces, beautiful countryside. So you've got a little bit of everything on this particular holiday. So a nice off the beaten track suggestion, I think, here. And in similar fashion to that, our next holiday works in a very similar way. So this time, rather than the Orkney Islands, we focus on the Outer Hebrides. So again, we travel on the Caledonian sleeper to Inverness, 1 night, including heading over to the Isle of Skye. And then this time transfer to Ullapool and take the ferry over to Stornoway for a 2-night stay on the Outer Hebrides. Again, fully guided to let you explore all of the different locations and make sure you see all of the main sites there. And then you would travel back to Inverness, have another 2-night stay before, again, heading on to Edinburgh for 2 nights and then back to wherever you'd like to end up at the end of it all. Reminder, of course, we haven't really spoken about Inverness too much, but the cultural capital of the Scottish Highlands, plenty to see and do, including the imposing Inverness Castle here overlooking the River Ness. So after leaving Inverness, again, as I mentioned before, the way that the travel would work is you would travel by transfer to Ullapool and then catch the ferry over to Stornoway, which is the capital of the Outer Hebrides. As part of the guided tour during a 2-night stay there, you would visit sites such as the CALLANISH stones, which you can see here, erected over 5,000 years ago. And again, they predate Stonehenge, they predate the pyramids, lots and lots of history here, erected in the late Neolithic era, and they were the site of many different kinds of rituals and things like that during the Bronze Age. So again, a real window back in time, I suppose, for us to explore. One of many beautiful settings in the Outer Hebrides you would visit as part of this trip. Also, the Butt of Lewis you would visit too, with a famous lighthouse built in the 1860s. And a little trivia fact for you, it was actually the last lighthouse in the UK to become fully automated. Quite a famous spot, famous view, and again, those great wide open spaces. As indeed, you would also have heading over to the Isle of Harris as well, famous for mountainous landscapes, and also, as you can see here, pristine, unspoiled beaches, absolutely beautiful, and looking right out to sea. Wonderful lungfuls of that great island air as well, and nice to get away from it all. It's not as habitated as much as some of the other destinations you'll visit as well. So it is a little bit more remote, and just I think the kind of destination maybe that a lot of us have been dreaming about a little bit over the past 12 months or so, and being able to visit somewhere exactly like that. And again, nice to have some of these destinations, if not on our own doorstep, then in our own country, and perhaps a reminder of some of the different places we can visit that we might not always think about. And all of these trips, we have a 2-night stay in the Scottish capital included as well. Again, if you're a history lover, if you've been to Edinburgh, you'll already know. And if you haven't, I'd highly recommend it. So many beautiful buildings, great contrast between the medieval old town and the more Georgian buildings of the new town. You've got the castle with the Scottish crown jewels, lots and lots to see and do. And again, if you're looking at using one of the featured upgrades that we can do to make use of the limited time credit offer that we have at the moment, here's another idea of how you could do that. You could add in an additional excursion or sightseeing activity, such as the Scotch whisky experience when in Rome, or at least when in Scotland and all that. You can learn everything you ever wanted to know and more besides about Scotch whisky from the true masters. And on this particular tour, you get to explore the world's largest collection, home to over 4,000 bottles with a range of different single malts and blended whiskies. And yes, there is tasting included. And of course, you can come home with souvenirs too. Now, if whiskey is not your thing, don't worry. There's lots of other different ideas and options we can include in Edinburgh, and indeed other destinations as well. So if that's the sort of thing that you think might be nice to do, to perhaps add in some additional activities or different things to do as part of your holiday, then just let us know. And there's lots of great options we'd be happy to talk you through in each destination and find the best one for you. Okay, so our first 3 holidays today that we've looked at have all been focused around the UK, and a couple of them have been slightly more off the beaten track, but perhaps with that historical bent, historical theme running through them all, and that kind of continues with the other 2 destinations we will look at today as well. And next up, we'll look slightly further afield, so might be perfect for later this year or for summer next year, perhaps springtime. And a really famous destination, of course, Sicily by train. One of those titles that does exactly what it says on the tin, tells you exactly what you'll be doing. So here, the journey will either begin in London or at your local train station, whichever you prefer. And you would start off by taking the Eurostar between London and Paris, and that's around about 2 hours and 20 minutes in duration. In Paris, it's a really straightforward change of trains before taking the direct high-speed train from London to Milan, and it's Milan that you would spend an overnight stay. You have the next day to explore Milan before taking an overnight sleeper train from Milan all the way to Taormina in Sicily. And this sleeper train journey is quite interesting for a number of different reasons. Principally, I'll pick just two. One of them is that it's actually one of the longest sleeper train journeys in Europe. In fact, it's the longest one in Italy. And in fact, when you wake up the next morning, you'll have left Naples far behind, and you'll be travelling along the southwestern coast of Italy, along the boot, as it were. And if you look at the dotted line, you can see that the train journey hugs the coastline really closely, so you get some great views looking out to sea before you reach the Straits of Messina. And then what happens next is you get to experience one of the only remaining train and ferry journey combinations in the world, as the train is shunted onto to a ferry and crosses over the Straits of Messina. Train arrives the other side on Sicily, and the train is shunted out and carries along its merry way. In fact, it actually splits in two when it arrives. Part goes west and part goes east. So you would be heading off to Taormina, where you would start off with a 2-night stay there. You get to explore the ancient Greek theatre, the Roman temples. Then you'd head south to Catania for a 2-night stay there, including a visit to Europe's biggest active volcano, Mount Etna, of course, before heading to Palermo for 2 nights in the Sicilian capital. Then you can either fly home, or if you prefer, retrace your steps, or even travel overnight. There's a ferry that runs overnight from Palermo to Naples, and you could head back home that way. So I think we might have lost our connection briefly there. Apologies for that. But here is the first port of call that you would arrive at on your holiday after the initial train journey. You spend the day in Milan, and this is the famous Duomo, the cathedral in Milan. What a great, imposing building that is. And lots of really interesting galleries for shopping, coffee drinking, and other great activities not too far away as well. So lots to explore on your day in Milan before catching the sleeper. Or another way that you could use the credit that we have to enhance the trip, the limited time offer that we have at the moment, might be to add in an extra day. And that way you could add a day trip to somewhere like Bellagio, as you can see here on Lake Como. What a fantastic setting that is. Very easy to get to from Milan, absolutely beautiful setting, and very, very easy to make a day trip out of and just extend the holiday a little bit. So as I mentioned at the start, we've got this limited time offer with some credit to pick your perk and choose an activity to upgrade your holiday with. And if you don't fancy changing the hotel room or upgrading the travel perhaps, or maybe you've decided to do that already, who knows, then here's another idea of how you could still make use of that option. You could upgrade by extending your holiday, adding an extra night, and maybe adding in a great activity or a different destination, like the example we have here. And then after the sleeper journey that I was talking about a short time ago, we arrive into Sicily, and this is Taormina, and more specifically, this is the ancient Greek theatre built in the 3rd century BC, and still in use from time to time today as well. So if you're lucky, you might get to experience a performance here as well. but you can see plenty to explore. What a wonderful, wonderful setting it is with the sea that you can see there, of course, as a backdrop. And just once again, a fantastic gateway to the ancient world and lots to explore. And lots of other interesting buildings and plenty to see and do in TAORMINA, as there is in CATANIA, which is the next port of call. And in fact, whilst you're in CATANIA, you also get to visit Mount Etna, Europe's biggest active volcano. And again, pretty breathtaking experience. You can see the people dotted around the rim of the volcano there. Almost, in a way, it looks like a shot from an alien planet or something, doesn't it? In some ways, when you just see it that close in. But a really memorable experience and great activity to do. And then last but not least, you head over to Palermo, the Sicilian capital. Lots of, again, wonderful buildings and architecture. One example of which is right on screen now. It's the Praetorian Fountain in the heart of the historic centre. Originally, this was actually built in Florence. Again, little trivia fact, it was built in Florence in 1554. And then 20 years later, it was manually transferred to Palermo, which must have been quite the feat to do, really. But a really impressive structure, and the architecture there, of course, as well. The statues and surrounding buildings too. And there's lots of great buildings like this in Palermo. It's also, the whole island really is great for seafood if you are a seafood lover. There's lots and lots to see and do, or just relax and sit back with a glass of something cold perhaps, and enjoy the wonderful views out to sea as well. Whatever it might be, there's lots of great things you can get up to in this part of the world. And moving on, we'll look at something slightly different once again, and this time not just one island, but a couple of different ones that we'll look at on the next holiday. This is our trip to Athens, Santorini and Crete by train. This is one of a number of relatively new Greek holidays that we've introduced, which you can find on our website. If you'd like to have a look at all of them, then just search for Greece and peruse the different options. But we've selected this one for today to go with the island theme. And again, it really will carry on that theme of history as well, I think. So there's quite a lot involved in this one. So I'll try and go relatively slowly to explain all the inclusions and how it all works. Of course, if you do have a question, the questions box is there, so we'll be happy to explain in a little bit more detail if required. Anyway, let's make a start. Once again, we start in a similar fashion to the last holiday with Eurostar to Paris and then direct train to Milan, an overnight stay in Milan. And then the next day, rather than taking a sleeper as we did to Sicily, this time you would take one of the really comfortable high-speed trains in Italy to the port of Bari, and then from there you would catch an overnight ferry to Patras. So you've now arrived in Greece. From Patras, you would be picked up and taken by transfer, crossing the ancient Corinth Canal from Patras to Athens. And you'd have a 3-night stay in Athens where, amongst other things, you get to explore the iconic Acropolis. So much history, once again, there to explore, and wonderful museum there too. We also include, as part of the 3-night stay, a day trip out to Delphi, which is, we describe it as an archaeological gem on the screen. And I think that's probably, I can't think of anything better than that. So we'll use that as a description. Again, great window to the ancient world, lots to see and visit, and fantastic to be able to include it. Then after your 3-night stay in Athens, you would have a transfer to Piraeus, which is the port, and then you would take a ferry over to the beautiful island of Santorini, where you would have a 2-night stay. After that, it's another ferry journey over to Crete. Now, to explain the series of numbers below, rather than just stay in one destination, there are so many beautiful parts to the island. We really want to give a flavour of some of the different amazing places that you can visit. So that's why you have a number of different nights in different places as part of the island. So what will happen is you take the ferry over from Santorini, as I mentioned, and you'll start off with 2 nights in Heraklion. And whilst there, you'll also visit Knossos and discover the palace there. Again, so much history, so much to see and do. Beautiful scenery and surroundings, of course, as well. We also have 2 nights stay in Agios Nikolaos, also a night in RETHYMNON, and 2 nights in CHANIA as well. Now, between all of those destinations, you are picked up by private car and taken from A to B. So you don't have to worry about finding your own way between them, or how will it work, etc. All of that kind of thing. As there's no rail network on Crete, we'll take you by private car, and you'll move from town to town that way. And then at the end of things, you can take a flight back to the UK from Chania to bring things to a close. Or if you prefer, you could always head back to Athens and go home from there as well by ferry and by rail if you wanted to also. And this is, of course, needs very little introduction. This is the Acropolis, the ancient citadel on the rocky outcrop, containing the remains of many fascinating, important buildings, such as the Parthenon, as we can see here, a former temple to the goddess Athena, completed in 438 BC. As I mentioned briefly before, there's a really interesting museum too. It's just, right a window once again to the past. Fantastic scenery as well, great location. Looking down over Athens, it's really stunning and an absolute must visit. So we have 3 nights in Athens altogether, and on one of the days we take you out by day, transfer over to Delphi, and here you can see this wonderful image. Here it is of the ancient theatre of Delphi, which was originally situated within the Temple of Apollo. And again, what a beautiful backdrop it is too. Absolutely stunning. Now, of course, in ancient times, this was home famously to the Oracle of Delphi, and this is where you would go if you wanted to divine the future. So if you were planning on waging a war or something like that, or some other worthwhile activity, then you would go and consult the oracle and speak to the priestess, who would do that for you, and you would find out whether this was a good thing to do or not. I don't know what the success rating was. They don't really have rate your oracle or anything like that, as we might have now. So I can't tell you what the percentages were, but anyway, it was the done thing. And it's a real, once again, it's an architectural gem, we called it, and again, that really does hit the nail on the head. It's a fascinating place to see and explore. Again, having a guide with you really does help bringing out some of the nuances and explanations that you might not have been aware of. And again, what a fantastic backdrop it is, of course, as well. So really, this is definitely one for the history and culture buffs. There's lots of great places to visit here. And then for a little bit of relaxation, you take the ferry over from Piraeus, the port of Athens, across these beautiful, pristine blue seas that you can see here, and you would head over to the island of Santorini. And really, the main town of Thera is famous for these iconic whitewashed Greek buildings that you can see here. They're really, really, famous worldwide, aren't they? Also, plenty of windmills on the island as well. And it also has a really dramatic setting. It's 1,200 feet above sea level, meaning you get some breathtaking views like this one. So a really nice place to relax, do a little bit of exploring if you want, but just sit back and take it all in. And then we head over to Crete. Now we've actually only got 2 slides remaining, but I'll try and fill in all of the gaps because I just think there's so much included. Just want to try and paint as vivid a picture as I possibly can. So let's try and explain how things work. So you would take the ferry from Santorini over to Crete, and you would start off with 2 nights in the capital of Heraklion. Whilst you're in Heraklion, you'd also pay a visit to Knossos. You visit the palace. Knossos, according to legend, was home to King Minos, the Minotaur, and the labyrinth. So find out all about that famous story. And then you go on to spend 2 nights in the small town of Agios Nikolaos, which is a little bit more off the beaten track in some respects. And you'd also, while you're there, take a day trip to the uninhabited island of Spinalonga. So we really do have lots of inclusions here. And as I say, you're taken by private transfer in between each one of these destinations. So it's all done, all arranged for you. The next destination that you visit is the fascinating town of RETHYMNON, which you can see here. And the old town in RETHYMNON is a really interesting mix of Byzantine ruins, old Venetian buildings, the Turkish minarets as well. It really does have a real fusion, a real blend. And of course, you've got those welcoming Greek tavernas. We couldn't really not mention those, could we? And that wonderful waterside setting as well. So really nice place to stop and visit, to a picturesque place to enjoy an overnight stay. And then we finish up by spending 2 nights in CHANIA. And you're not just driven straight there. We do a slight detour along the way because you're actually transferred via the 16th century citadel outside RETHYMNON, and also pay a brief visit to the Baroque monastery of Arcadia, which is also along the way. And then you head over to CHANIA, which you can see here, the former capital of Crete, and also home to Zorba the Greek as well. CHANIA is famous for lots of things, including its beaches, the welcoming tavernas once again, of course, the lighthouse, which dates from the 1500s, and the 14th century Venetian harbour. Lots to see and admire. And there's also the municipal market of CHANIA, which is known as the Agora, which is well worth a wander around. Really interesting place too. And again, beautiful setting to relax, of course, as well. Eat plenty of food, drink whatever you fancy as well, and just relax as your holiday comes to an end. So lots of different inclusions here. As I mentioned, we do have a couple of different Greek holidays. If you would like to have a peruse of those, you can just select Greece from our website and take a look. And if you are a big history fan, we also have, if you like the ancient world, we do have one that includes a couple of nights in Rome before heading on to BRAE and then heading on to Athens. So if you'd like a mix of Colosseum, Acropolis, all of that kind of thing, really nice combination that we have on there too. So that almost brings us to the end. A reminder of our website, railbookers.co.uk. This is where you can find all of these holidays and more besides as well. You can either search them by destination, you can free type in, if you can remember any of the names or the combinations that we've looked at today, or you can find different types of holiday by searching via holiday types that you can see at the top line there. So it might be luxury holidays, could be holidays within the UK, could be any number of different collections that we have for you. You can also find those e-brochures all available for download as well. So whether it's UK, cruise extensions, luxury, rail holidays, all available there. And lastly, the details of the Pick Your Perk promotion, how much you get, the limited period that you have available to be able to take advantage of that, and some ideas on selections you could pick, all available via railbookers.co.uk, or alternatively, give us a call on the number you can see at the bottom of the screen. So that does take us pretty much to the end. It's quite a lengthy webinar this Tuesday afternoon. I hope you're not wilting in the heat at the end of that. But we'll see if we can take time to answer a question or two very briefly, if we can. Time is marching on, so I will try not to keep you for too long, I promise. But we'll see if we can answer one or two very quickly. And for everyone else who has submitted a question, as I mentioned before, one of the team will reach out to you tomorrow, probably not this evening, just to make sure we've answered that question for you. So we will answer every single one. Anyway, stop talking answer some questions. Right, let's see what we've got. See if we can pick a quick one. Yeah, I've got a couple of people asking about the last holiday to Greece and about the travel. So just to recap that, it's Eurostar to Paris, connecting high-speed train to Milan, overnight in Milan, high-speed train from Milan down to Bari the next day, overnight ferry from Bari to Patras, and then you'll be picked up by private car, taken along the crossing over the ancient Corinth Canal over to Athens. 3 nights in Athens. We'd also have a day trip out to Delphi while you're there, and then ferry over to Santorini for 2 nights, ferry over to Crete, and then staying in a number of different locations to really try and get everything out of the island by staying in those different places dotted along the coastline there, getting a real full flavour, we hope. And you'll be taken in between each of those, and also met off the ferry, etc., by transfer throughout, and then fly back to the UK. So if you don't want to fly, we can take you back by ferry to Athens and then head home from there as well. So for those of you who've answered variations on that theme, I'll try and kill a few birds with one stone and just recap again how that works. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're happy to go through it again in more detail. So just let us know if you'd like that recapped. Okay, possibly time for one more quick one, and then we really will have to wrap things up. This one, yeah, great question from Bill here. Hello there, Bill. Hope you're safe and well wherever you might be. And this is a question that we always get coming through on the webinars, but because it's one that makes sense to ask, and it's a question about luggage and how much you can take with you on these holidays. A short answer to that one, Bill, is if there's a flight involved, obviously depends on the airline at the end of the day for how much they will allow you to bring. But for those that don't include a flight, or where there's the option to travel by train rather than fly home, then the short answer is you can take pretty much as much luggage as you need to. You can take 2 items of luggage per, or a maximum of 2 items of luggage per person, plus 1 item of hand luggage. So the short answer is pretty much as you're comfortable carrying and looking after. And even better news is nobody weighs it at the end. Nobody is going to tell you you've taken too much, or you've stocked up on too many presents or souvenirs or whatever it might be. Nobody will care. Nobody will weigh it. So yeah, you can bring back all the presents and souvenirs you need to, which will hopefully make a nice end to the holiday. Speaking of nice ends, that brings us to a close at 1 minute to 6. So a long one today. Hope it's been enjoyable, despite being a little bit longer than usual. Hope it's given some food for thought, some ideas about possible future travel to some of these great island destinations. Thank you very much for joining us this Tuesday afternoon stroke evening. We do appreciate it. It's nice to have you here as always. Stay safe. Obviously, continue to look after yourselves. Very important. We're getting there, aren't we? Hopefully, fingers crossed. And it's great to see so many of you traveling actually over the last week or so, and traveling up to Scotland and various places around the UK, and hopefully the rest of Europe starts opening up once it's safe to do so in the not too distant future. Fingers crossed, and beyond, of course, as well. Anyway, have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Happy Tuesday, and stay safe, stay well, and hopefully we'll get to have the pleasure of your company on another webinar in the not too distant future. Thank you.